The wine glass shattered against the marble floor, and Victoria Hale's scream cut through the restaurant like a blade. "Get your hands off me!" Every head turned. A single father in a worn gray jacket stood frozen 3 feet from her wheelchair. His hands raised, his face white with shock. He hadn't touched her. He hadn't even spoken. He'd simply sat down at the wrong table, her table, and now 60 strangers were staring at him like he was a criminal. Bam! But here's what nobody in that restaurant knew. Daniel Brooks was about to become the only man in the world Victoria Hale would trust with her life. If you're watching from Dallas, Phoenix, or Chicago tonight, drop your city in the comments and hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss how this ends. The Blackwood Grill on West 57th Street didn't serve people, it served status. Every Thursday at 7:15 p.m., sharp Victoria Hale was wheeled to the same corner booth, the one with the view of the skyline, the one with the reserved brass plaque, the one that cost more per hour than most Americans earned in a week. For 7 months since the accident that took her legs, she had eaten there alone. Always alone. The staff knew better than to ask questions. Tonight was supposed to be the same. It wasn't. Daniel Brooks walked through the front door at 7:22 p.m., wearing a gray jacket with a frayed cuff and a tie his daughter Lily had picked out for him that morning. She was 11 years old. She'd told him the tie made him look like a man who owned things. Daniel hadn't owned anything in 9 years. Not since the cancer took his wife. Not since the medical bills ate the house. Not since he'd started working 3 jobs just to keep Lily in the same school district her mother had picked before she died. But tonight, his boss from the overnight janitorial crew had handed him an envelope. "Client appreciation dinner," the man had grunted. "1 per department. Your name got pulled. Don't embarrass us." Daniel had stared at the envelope for 10 minutes before opening it. Now he stood in the lobby of the Blackwood Grill, clutching a reservation card that read, "Brooks Party of 7:15 p.m., and watching a hostess in a black dress look him up and down like he was a stain on her carpet. "Sir," she said in that voice women used when they meant get out. "Do you have a reservation?" "Yes, ma'am." Daniel handed her the card. "Brooks." She took it with 2 fingers. She read it. She read it again. Her mouth tightened. 1 moment. She disappeared. Daniel stood there while a couple in matching Rolexes walked past him and pretended he didn't exist. A man laughed too loudly at the bar. Somewhere a violin was playing something Daniel didn't recognize, because Daniel had never in his life been inside a place that hired a violinist. His palms were sweating, and he thought about Lily. He thought about how she'd stood on her tiptoes that morning and fixed his collar and said, "Daddy, you look fancy." He thought about how she'd packed him a granola bar in case they didn't feed him enough at the fancy place, because she worried about him the way other kids worried about storms. The hostess came back. Her face had changed. "Mr. Brooks," she said, and the word Mr. came out like it hurt her. "Your table is ready. Please follow me." She didn't wait. She walked fast, weaving between tables of men in $1,000 suits and women in pearls that cost more than Daniel's truck. He tried to keep up. He tried not to look at anyone. He tried not to notice that every single person he passed stopped eating to watch him go by. And then she stopped. And she gestured to a corner booth. And there in that booth was a woman in a wheelchair. Daniel froze. The woman had dark hair pulled back tight. She was wearing a charcoal suit that looked like it had been stitched directly onto her body. A glass of red wine sat in front of her untouched. Her phone was face down on the table. She was staring out the window at the Manhattan skyline like she was daring it to blink first. She didn't turn when they approached. The hostess cleared her throat. "Ma'am, your guest has arrived." Victoria Hale turned her head, and every muscle in Daniel Brooks's body locked. He knew that face. Everyone in New York knew that face. It had been on the cover of Forbes 3 years running. It had been on the news the night the helicopter went down over the Hudson, the night the pilot died, the night the doctors said she'd never walk again. It had been on a billboard 2 blocks from Lily's school selling a skincare line that Daniel couldn't afford to buy his own daughter. A Victoria Hale, 38 years old, net worth somewhere north of $2 billion. The woman who ran Hale Industries with an iron fist from a wheelchair she refused in every interview to acknowledge. And she was looking at him like he had just walked into her bedroom without knocking. "Who," she said very quietly, "are you?" Daniel's mouth opened. Nothing came out. The hostess's face went the color of old paper. "Ma'am, the reservation, there must be some confusion. This is Mr. Brooks. He has a card for." "I didn't invite anyone." "Ma'am, the system shows." "I didn't invite anyone." The words weren't loud. They didn't have to be. Victoria Hale had spent her entire adult life learning how to deliver a sentence that could gut a man without raising her voice, and she delivered one now. The hostess actually took a step back. Daniel found his voice. "I'll go," he said. Victoria's eyes snapped to him, cold, assessing. "Sit down, Mr. Brooks." "Ma'am, I don't want to." "I said sit down." He sat. The hostess fled like the building was on fire. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Victoria was staring at him now with the focus of a woman reading a contract for hidden clauses. Daniel kept his hands on his knees under the table because he was afraid if he put them on the tablecloth, he'd leave a mark. A waiter appeared, poured water, disappeared. "Someone at my office," Victoria finally said, "made a mistake, a serious one." "Yes, ma'am." "You weren't supposed to be here." "No, ma'am." "Then why are you—" Daniel took a breath. He thought about lying. He thought about saying something smart. He thought about the way Lily had said you look fancy. He told the truth. "My boss gave me an envelope, said it was a client dinner. One person from the crew got picked, and the name on the card was mine. I didn't know whose table I was sitting at. I swear on my daughter, ma'am. I didn't know." Victoria didn't move. "What crew?" "Victoria. Night janitorial, ma'am. Hale Tower, floors 38 through 46. I've been on that shift 2 years. Something moved in her face. Just a flicker, gone before he could name it. "You clean my building." "Yes, ma'am." "What's your name again?" "Daniel. Daniel Brooks." "And someone," she said slowly, "at my company thought it would be appropriate to put a janitor at my private dinner table and tell him it was a client appreciation event. Ma'am, I don't think they meant—" "They meant exactly what they did, Mr. Brooks." Her voice was ice now. "Someone in my HR department decided to humiliate me, or test me, or both, and they used you to do it." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Ma'am, I'll leave. Right now. I'll just—" "No." He blinked. "Ma'am, you came here in good faith." She picked up her wine glass. Her hand, he noticed, was perfectly steady. "You did nothing wrong. And if I let you walk out of this restaurant right now tomorrow morning, every person in this city who watched you come in will tell a story about the poor man who got thrown out of the Blackwood by the crippled CEO, and I am not giving them that story." She set the glass down. "You're going to sit here. You're going to have dinner. And when we're done, you're going to walk out of this restaurant with your head up. Do you understand me, Mr. Brooks?" Daniel opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Yes, ma'am." "Good." She picked up the menu and handed it to him across the table. "Order anything you want, and don't look at the prices. I'll know if you do." Daniel took the menu with both hands. He was trying very hard not to shake. Somewhere in the back of his mind, Lily's voice was saying, "Daddy, you look fancy," and he thought if he opened his mouth right now, he might cry, so he didn't open his mouth. He just looked at the menu. The cheapest thing on it was a $47 salad. He closed his eyes for a second. Just a second. When he opened them, Victoria Hale was watching him, and something in her face had changed again, deeper this time. Something she didn't want him to see. Something she didn't know he could see. "Mr. Brooks." "Yes, ma'am." "How old is your daughter?" He looked up startled. "I 11, ma'am. She's 11. "And her mother?" The question was soft, almost kind. And that somehow was worse than anything else she'd said to him that night. "My wife passed," Daniel said. 9 years ago. Cancer." Victoria was quiet for a long time. "I'm sorry." "Thank you, ma'am." "Stop calling me ma'am." "Yes, ma, yes. Sorry." "What do you call your boss?" "Sir." "Don't call me sir either." For the first time all night, Daniel almost smiled. "What should I call you?" "Victoria." "Victoria." She nodded once, picked up her own menu, pretended to read it. But Daniel had been watching people for 41 years. He'd been watching them for the 9 years since Lily's mother died, because when you raise a child alone, you learn to read faces the way other men read newspapers. And what he saw in Victoria Hale's face right now, behind the charcoal suit and the iron voice and the wheelchair she pretended wasn't there, what he saw was loneliness so deep it looked like a well with no bottom. She wasn't cruel. She was drowning. And somehow a man in a frayed gray jacket from the night janitorial crew had just sat down across from her and become the first person in 7 months who looked at her face instead of her chair. The waiter came back. Victoria ordered without looking up. Daniel asked for the salad because it was the only thing he could pronounce. "No, he won't," Victoria said to the waiter. "He'll have the ribeye, medium, and bring him the bread." The waiter nodded and left. Daniel stared at her. "I don't, ma'am, Victoria, I can't let you." "Mr. Brooks." "Yes." "I spend more money on a single pair of shoes than you make in a month. Let me buy you a steak." "Murrah." And then, for the first time in 7 months, since the helicopter, since the hospital, since the morning she'd woken up and the doctor had told her the word permanent, Victoria Hale smiled. It was small, it was tired, it was barely there. But Daniel Brooks saw it, shine, and something in his chest, something that had been locked tight for 9 long years since he'd buried the only woman he'd ever loved, something he thought was dead, and buried with her, moved. Just a little. Just enough to scare him. He looked down at the tablecloth. He picked up his water glass with both hands so she wouldn't see them shake. Across from him, Victoria Hale set her menu down and looked out the window again. But her shoulders, he noticed, had dropped about an inch. Like a woman setting down a weight she'd been carrying alone for too long. Neither of them knew yet. Neither of them could have known that at a corner table in the Blackwood Grill on an ordinary Thursday night in New York City, a reservation made by mistake, a reservation that should never have happened, a reservation someone in HR had either bungled or weaponized, had just put 2 of the loneliest people in Manhattan across from each other for the first time. And by the time the check came, nothing in either of their lives would ever be the same again. The waiter brought the bread. Daniel thanked him. Victoria watched Daniel break the loaf in half, watched him set the bigger piece on her plate without asking, without thinking, without even realizing he was doing it. And for a moment, just a moment, the billionaire CEO, who had not cried in front of another human being since she was 6 years old, had to look very hard out the window at the Manhattan skyline and blink several times, very quickly. She didn't say thank you. She couldn't. But she ate the bread. And Daniel Brooks, the single father in the frayed gray jacket, sat in a booth that cost more per hour than he made in a week and watched a woman the whole world thought was made of steel eat a piece of bread a stranger had given her. And he thought to himself very quietly, "Oh no. Oh no, Lily. What have I walked into?" Bah. He stared at it. He'd never seen a piece of meat that big outside of a butcher's window. There was a small pile of something green next to it that he couldn't identify, and a single potato carved into the shape of a flower, and a sauce that smelled like red wine and butter, and something he was pretty sure was truffle because he'd read about truffle once in a magazine at the dentist's office. Victoria was watching him again. "Eat it before it gets cold, Mr. Brooks." "Daniel." She paused. "Daniel." "Yes, ma'am. I mean yes." He picked up his knife. He picked up his fork. His hands, he realized, were too big for the silverware, or the silverware was too small for his hands. And either way, he felt like a child at a tea party. He cut a small piece. He put it in his mouth. He closed his eyes. "Good. Ma'am, I don't—" He swallowed. "I don't have the words." "Try. It tastes like—" He shook his head. "My wife used to make pot roast every Sunday, before she got sick. That's the closest thing I've had to this in 9 years." Victoria set down her fork. "Tell me about her." Daniel looked up. "Ma'am, your wife. Tell me about her." He wasn't sure why she was asking. He wasn't sure why he answered. Maybe it was the wine he hadn't touched. Maybe it was the way she was sitting across from him, with her own food going cold, looking at him like whatever he said next actually mattered. Maybe it was just that nobody, not his boss, not his neighbors, not even his own mother before she passed, had asked him about Sarah in a long, long time. Her name was Sarah, he said. She was a third-grade teacher. She laughed at her own jokes before she finished telling them. She couldn't cook to save her life except for that pot roast. She used to say Lily got her eyes and my stubbornness, and that was the worst possible combination. Victoria almost smiled. "Is it?" "Yes, ma'am. She was right." "How long were you married?" 12 years. She got diagnosed in year 10. Fought it for 2. The last 6 months." He stopped. He picked up his water. He set it down again. "The last 6 months, she made me promise I wouldn't shut down. She said Daniel Lily's gonna need a daddy who still knows how to smile, and I promised her." "Did you keep the promise?" He looked at her for a long moment. "I'm trying." Victoria picked up her wine glass. She didn't drink from it. She just held it. That's more than most people do. "How about you?" he said. And the moment it came out of his mouth, he wanted to take it back. He braced for the ice. The iron voice. The reminder that he was a janitor and she was a billionaire, and he did not get to ask her questions. It didn't come. Instead, she set the wine down. "What about me?" "I'm sorry. I shouldn't—" "No. Ask." "I just meant—" He struggled. "Is there someone? Family? Anyone who—" "No." The word was flat. No bitterness in it. Just a fact, stated the way a woman might state the weather. "My father died when I was 14. My mother followed 8 years later. I have a half-brother in Seattle I haven't spoken to in a decade because he sued the estate. I was engaged twice, and both times the men found out I made more than them and decided that was a character flaw. I have 370 employees who report to me, Daniel, and not one of them has ever asked me how I'm doing. That's not right. It's my life. That doesn't make it right." She looked at him. Really looked at him. The way a woman looks at a man when she's trying to figure out if he's dangerous or lying or both. "You're a strange one, Daniel Brooks." "Yes, ma'am, I've been told." "By whom?" "Lily, mostly." And for the second time that night, Victoria Hale smiled. This one was bigger, not by much, but it reached her eyes for half a second before she caught it and pulled it back in. "Tell me about Lily." He set down his fork, and he talked. He talked about the way Lily read books at the breakfast table with one hand while eating cereal with the other. He talked about how she wanted to be a veterinarian because she'd found a baby bird in the yard last summer and cried for 3 days when it didn't make it. He talked about how she still slept with a stuffed rabbit her mother had given her when she was 2, and how last year some boys at school had made fun of her for it, and how she'd told them very calmly that her mother was in heaven, and the rabbit was the last thing her mother's hands had touched before the cancer got bad, and how those boys had never bothered her again. He talked about how she packed him a granola bar that morning because she worried about him. He talked about how she'd fixed his collar. He talked about how she thought his tie made him look like a man who owned things. He didn't realize he was crying until Victoria slid a napkin across the table. "I'm sorry," he said, wiping his face. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I don't do this. It's fine. I don't even know you. I shouldn't be." "Daniel." He looked up. Victoria's own eyes were wet. She wasn't crying, but they were wet, and she was not pretending otherwise. "I haven't heard anyone talk about a child like that in a very long time." "Ma'am, my father." She looked down at her plate. "He used to talk about me like that, before he died. I'd forgotten what it sounded like." The table went very quiet. The waiter drifted close, sensed the weather drifted away. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said. "Go ahead." "The chair." He expected her to freeze, to shut down, to give him the iron voice and the cold eyes and tell him that was the line he didn't get to cross. She didn't. "7 months ago," she said. "Helicopter, over the Hudson. The pilot didn't make it. I was in the back. They got me out of the water and told me in the hospital that the spine wasn't coming back. Not the legs. Not all the way. I'm sorry. Everybody says that. I mean it. I know. That's why it's strange." She picked up her wine and finally, for the first time all night, took a real drink. "Here's what nobody tells you, Daniel. When something like that happens to a woman like me, when a woman with my kind of money suddenly can't walk, nobody knows what to do with you. The board looked at me like a liability. My lawyers looked at me like a case. My so-called friends looked at me like a charity. Men stopped calling. Women started bringing casseroles like I was already dead. And every single person in that tower," she gestured vaguely north toward Hale Tower, "every single one of them, Daniel, from my COO down to the girl who brings me my coffee, walks into my office and immediately looks at the floor. Nobody looks me in the eye anymore. Nobody. I'm looking you in the eye right now. I noticed. Is that why you didn't throw me out? Partly. What's the other part?" She considered the question. She considered him. She set down the wine. "The other part," she said, "is that when you walked in here tonight in that jacket with the frayed cuff, and that hostess looked at you like you were something she'd stepped in, you still walked to this table. You didn't bolt. You didn't apologize your way out the door. You sat down in front of the most powerful woman in this restaurant, and you said, 'Yes, ma'am,' like you meant it. Do you know how rare that is? I just didn't want to lose my job, ma'am." Victoria. Victoria. And that's another thing. She almost laughed. "You don't know what you are, do you?" "Ma'am?" "Never mind." She picked up her fork. She ate finally. A real bite. Daniel watched the smallest bit of color come back into her face like a woman who'd forgotten what food tasted like and was just now remembering. They ate in silence for a while. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence Daniel hadn't shared with another adult in 9 years, the kind where nobody needed to fill the air. Then Victoria set her fork down. "Daniel." "Yes." "How much do you make?" He looked up, startled. "Ma'am." "At the janitorial job, and the other ones. You said you work 3. "Ma'am, I don't think—" "It's not a trap, I'm asking." He hesitated. His pride was a thing he'd kept folded carefully for 9 years. He didn't take it out for anyone. But he looked at her, and she was waiting. And he thought about Lily and the rabbit and the granola bar and the tie. "The janitorial is $15.50 an hour," he said. "Night shift, so there's a differential. 4 nights a week. Saturdays I do delivery for a hardware store cash. Sunday mornings I unload trucks at the grocery on 12th. Between all three after taxes, I clear about $2,800 a month. And rent. $1,650. For Manhattan. Queens. 1 bedroom. Lily has the bedroom. I have the couch. You sleep on a couch? Yes, ma'am. Every night? Yes, ma'am. Victoria was very still. And Lily's school? Public. Same district her mother picked when she was pregnant. Sarah walked those streets when she was... He stopped. Anyway, it's a good school. I keep her there. And health insurance. The janitorial gives me basic. It doesn't cover dental. Lily had a cavity last year and I... He stopped again. We figured it out. How? I skipped a car payment. Victoria stared at him. Daniel. Yes. What if I told you, she said slowly, that in my company, the one I built, the one that has my name on the building, you clean 4 nights a week, the janitorial staff is contracted out to a third party, specifically so that I don't have to pay them benefits. He didn't know what to say to that. I didn't set up the contract. My COO did, years ago. And every quarter since my accident, I've been signing budget summaries without reading them. Because I told myself the numbers didn't matter anymore. I told myself nothing mattered anymore. Her voice dropped. I sat in that booth for 7 months. Daniel and I ate dinner alone, and I signed papers, and I stopped reading the fine print. And somewhere in that fine print was a line that meant a man like you was sleeping on a couch so his daughter could have a bed. Ma'am, you didn't... Don't. It's not your... I said don't. Her voice cracked. Just barely. Just on the last word. Daniel shut his mouth. For a long moment, Victoria Hale, the richest woman at the Blackwood Grill, stared at the tablecloth like she was seeing something the tablecloth didn't know it was showing her. Then she lifted her head. Daniel? Yes. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I want you in my office. Ma'am. Hale Tower, 46th floor. Tell the guard at the front desk your name. He'll have a badge waiting. Ma'am, I have a shift. I'll handle the shift. I don't, Victoria, I don't understand. You don't have to understand yet. Am I in trouble? She almost laughed. It came out more like a breath. No, Daniel, you're not in trouble. You're the least trouble I've had in 7 months. She reached across the table. She didn't touch him. She just set her hand down, palm up on the white cloth between them. An offering. A quiet one. The kind of gesture a woman makes when she's forgotten how to make it and isn't sure if it'll be taken. Daniel looked at her hand. He looked at her face. And then very slowly, like a man reaching for something he was not sure he was allowed to have, he put his hand on top of hers. Her fingers were cold. Hers closed around his anyway. Neither of them said anything. The violin played something in the background. A woman 2 tables over laughed too loud. A waiter dropped a spoon somewhere in the kitchen, and the sound traveled all the way across the dining room like a small bell. Victoria Hale, who had not been touched with kindness by another human being in 7 months, closed her eyes for 1 full second. When she opened them, she pulled her hand back, neatly, without apology. Finish your steak, Daniel. Yes, ma'am. Victoria. Victoria. Sorry. And Daniel. Yes? When you go home tonight, tell Lily her father wore his tie very well. Daniel's throat closed up. Yes, ma'am. The check came eventually. Victoria didn't let him see it. She handed the waiter a black card without looking at the total, and the waiter took it away like it was made of glass. Daniel sat with his hands folded in his lap and tried not to think about how much of his rent that meal had cost. When they finally left, Victoria's driver was waiting out front with a black SUV and a ramp. A man in a dark coat lifted her wheelchair into the back with the practiced ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times and was very careful never to make a sound while doing it. Daniel stood on the curb in his frayed jacket and watched. Daniel. He turned. Victoria was already in the back of the SUV, the door still open, her face lit from inside by the cabin light. Yes. 9 a.m. 9 a.m. Don't be late. No, ma'am. She looked at him for another second, like she was memorizing something, like she wasn't sure she'd see it again. Good night, Daniel Brooks. Good night, Victoria. The door closed. The SUV pulled away from the curb and slid into traffic and was gone. Daniel stood there for a long time with his hands in his pockets. The doorman at the Blackwood Grill pretended not to see him. A taxi honked. Somewhere above him, a helicopter crossed the sky, and he watched it go. And he thought about a woman in the back of one, and the Hudson at night, and a spine that wouldn't heal, and a corner booth, where a billionaire ate alone every Thursday for 7 months. Then he walked 3 blocks to the subway. He rode the R train all the way out to Queens. He climbed 4 flights of stairs to the apartment with the sticky lock. He eased the door open as quietly as he could. Lily was asleep on the couch, his bed, with her book open on her chest and the stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. She'd waited up. She'd tried to wait up. She'd made it to page 41 of a chapter book and then lost the fight. Daniel stood in the doorway and looked at his daughter for a long moment. Then he walked over. He slid the book out from under her hand and marked the page with the old receipt he kept as a bookmark. He lifted her, she was getting too big for this, almost too big, and carried her to the bedroom. He laid her down. He pulled the blanket up. He kissed her forehead. She stirred. Daddy. I'm home, baby. How was the fancy dinner? He was quiet for a second. The kitchen clock ticked. Somewhere in the building, a pipe groaned. Baby, he said, something happened tonight. Good something or bad something? He thought about the hand on the tablecloth, the cold fingers closing around his, the way Victoria Hale had looked at him like he was the first person in 7 months who had seen her face instead of her chair. I don't know yet, sweetheart. Okay. Go to sleep. Okay, Daddy. She was out again in 10 seconds. The rabbit was under her chin. Her breath was slow and even. Daniel Brooks stood in the dark doorway of his daughter's bedroom in a worn gray jacket with a frayed cuff. And he thought about 9 a.m. and Hale Tower and a badge at the front desk with his name on it, and he did not sleep a single minute that whole night. He sat on the couch. He held the tie Lily had picked out for him. And he waited for morning. Daniel made Lily's breakfast with hands that wouldn't stop moving. Scrambled eggs, toast with the grape jelly she liked, a glass of milk. He set it on the table at 6:45, the way he'd set it on the table every morning for 4 years. And when Lily shuffled out of the bedroom in her pajamas with her hair sticking up, she stopped at the doorway and squinted at him. Daddy! Morning sunshine. Why are you wearing the tie? He looked down at himself. He hadn't changed. He was still in the same shirt and tie from the night before. He'd sat on the couch for 6 hours, and then at some point around 5 a.m., he'd stood up shaved, washed his face, and put the tie back on without realizing it. I have a meeting this morning. With who? A lady. Lily sat down at the table and picked up her fork. A lady like who? Like a very important lady baby. Is she nice? Daniel thought about that one. He thought about the hand on the tablecloth. He thought about the cold fingers closing around his. I think so. I don't know her well enough to say for sure. Did she pay for your dinner? Yes. Lily nodded like that settled it and ate her eggs. Ma'am. He walked her to the corner where she met the other kids for the crosswalk. He kissed the top of her head. He watched her go. And then he got on the R train at 7:40 a.m., in the same clothes he'd worn the night before, and he rode it into Manhattan with his hands folded in his lap like a man on his way to a funeral. At 8:51 a.m., Daniel Brooks walked into the lobby of Hale Tower. And he had walked into that lobby maybe 400 times, always at night, always through the side entrance, always with a cart and a lanyard that said, contracted cleaning staff in block letters. The guards at the front desk had never once looked up at him. He was a shape they waved through. He was part of the building the way a vent was part of the building. This morning he walked in through the front door. The guard looked up. It was Marcus. Marcus had been the morning guard at Hale Tower for 11 years. Marcus had a picture of his grandson on his desk. Marcus had never in his life said a single word to Daniel Brooks. "Sir, can I help you?" Daniel Brooks. I was told there's a badge." Marcus stared at him. "Brooks." "Yes, sir." Marcus looked down at his computer. He typed. He looked up. He looked down. He typed again. "Mr. Brooks." "Yes." "Ms. Hale is expecting you." The word Mr. did something funny to Daniel's stomach. Marcus had never called him Mr. Marcus had never called him anything. A badge came out of a little machine on Marcus's desk. It had Daniel's name on it. Above his name in blue letters it said, "Guest of the Chairman." 46th floor, sir. Private elevator. The attendant will take you up." "Thank you, Marcus." Marcus blinked. "You know my name." "I've cleaned your desk every Thursday night for 2 years, sir." Marcus's mouth opened slightly. He didn't say anything. Daniel took the badge and walked to the elevator and didn't look back. The elevator attendant was a woman in a gray suit who did not speak. She pushed a button. The doors closed. The floor rose. Daniel watched the numbers climb 12, 20, 28, 36, and he felt his heart move up with them. The doors opened on 46. A woman in a navy dress was waiting for him. She had the posture of a soldier and the face of a person who had been told something she did not like. "Mr. Brooks, I'm Margaret Chen. I'm Ms. Hale's chief of staff. Please follow me." He followed her. They walked down a hallway with gray carpet and glass walls. People in suits stopped what they were doing to watch him pass. A man on a phone call actually turned around so he could keep watching. A woman holding a stack of folders dropped one of them, and the folder hit the floor with a slap, and she didn't pick it up. Margaret Chen walked faster. "Ms. Chen." "Yes." "Why is everyone looking at me?" Because no one gets called up here, Mr. Brooks. Not like this. Not at 9 a.m. the morning after a dinner that wasn't on the calendar." "Oh." "Yes." "Oh." They reached a set of double doors at the end of the hall. Margaret put her hand on the handle. She stopped. "Mr. Brooks." "Yes." "I've worked for Miss Hale for 9 years." "Yes, ma'am." "She doesn't—" Margaret stopped. She started again. "I don't know what happened last night. I don't know who you are. I don't know why your name was on that reservation. But I've seen her every morning for the last 7 months, Mr. Brooks, and this morning when she came in, she looked up at me and said, 'Good morning, Margaret.' She hasn't said good morning to me since the accident." Daniel didn't know what to say. "Whatever this is," Margaret said, "please don't hurt her." "Ma'am, I wouldn't." "Good." She opened the door. Victoria Hale was behind a desk the size of a dining room table. She was in a black suit this time. Her hair was down. She had reading glasses on her nose, and she was going through a stack of papers with a red pen in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. The wheelchair was tucked under the desk so precisely that if you didn't know, you might not know. She looked up when he walked in. She set the pen down. "Daniel." "Ma'am?" "Victoria." "Victoria." "Margaret, thank you. Close the door." Margaret closed the door. Daniel heard it click. For a moment, they just looked at each other. In the gray morning light of the 46th floor, without the wine and the violins and the candle on the table, Victoria looked tired. She had the face of a woman who hadn't slept much either. "Sit down, Daniel." He sat. There was a chair across from the desk. It was black leather and cost more than his refrigerator. "How was Lily this morning?" "Ma'am?" Lily, your daughter. How was she? She was fine. She asked why I was wearing the tie. What did you tell her? That I had a meeting with a very important lady. Victoria smiled. Small, tired, real. Did you sleep? No, ma'am. Neither did I. She took off her reading glasses and set them on the desk. Daniel, I want to tell you what I did last night after I got home. Okay. I pulled every file in this company that has the word contractor on it. I had Margaret send me the full roster of everyone who cleans, cooks, drives, guards, or services any Hale-owned property in the tri-state area. Do you know how many people that is? No, ma'am. 4,062. He blinked. 4,062 human beings, Daniel, working on my properties, wearing my building's badges, and not one of them is technically my employee. Not one of them gets my benefits. Not one of them is on my health insurance. Because 15 years ago, before I was even CEO, my COO signed a contract that said we don't have to see them. Victoria, you didn't? Stop saying that. She said it quietly, but she said it hard. I keep telling you it's not my fault, and you keep agreeing with me, and I need you to understand something, Daniel. It is my fault. My name is on this building. My name is on the checks. When a man sleeps on a couch for 4 years, so his daughter can have a bedroom, and that man works in my building, and I didn't know he existed, that is my fault. I don't need you to forgive me for it. I need you to let me fix it. Daniel's throat was tight. What do you want me to do, ma'am? Victoria. Victoria, what do you want me to do? She opened a drawer in her desk. She took out a folder. She slid it across the glossy surface toward him. Open it. He opened it. It was a job offer. His eyes scanned it, and his brain stopped working, and he had to scan it again. The title at the top said, Director of Community Relations, Hale Foundation. The salary was $92,000 a year. There was health insurance, dental, vision, a retirement account, 3 weeks of paid vacation, a scholarship clause for the child of the employee fully paid at any accredited school of the family's choosing. At the bottom it said, Start date Monday. Daniel looked up. Ma'am Victoria, I can't. Yes, you can. I don't know how to do this job. I don't know what community relations is. I've never worked in an office. I don't have a college degree. I didn't finish high school, Victoria. My father got sick when I was 17 and I dropped out to work the shop. I can't sit at a desk on the 46th floor and pretend I know what I'm doing. Daniel. I can't take this. Daniel, listen to me. Ma'am, you don't understand? Listen. He closed his mouth. Victoria leaned forward. Her elbows were on the desk. Her hands were folded. Her voice, when it came, was quiet. Last night at dinner, you talked about your wife for 5 minutes and I felt more human than I have in 7 months. You asked me about my chair and you didn't flinch. You took the bigger piece of bread off your plate and put it on mine without looking, and I don't think you even knew you did it. That is not a small thing, Daniel. That is not something that a resume teaches you. Ma'am, that's just how my mother raised me. Exactly. He didn't understand. This company, she said, is full of people with degrees. I have Harvard MBAs on the floor below me who make $700,000 a year and cannot look me in the eye. I don't need another one of those, Daniel. What I need is a human being. I need someone who can stand in front of a room of 4,000 contracted workers. People who cleaned my toilets and parked my cars and served my coffee and were invisible to me for 7 months, and I need him to look them in the eye and tell them, I see you now. And I need them to believe him, because I cannot say it myself. They won't believe me, but they will believe you. Puh. He stared at her. Victoria, there's more. More. Read the scholarship clause. Again. He read it. He read it 3 times. His hands started to shake. Victoria. Yes. This says Lily. It says her name. Yes, it does. Fully paid. Any school. Kindergarten through a doctorate if she wants one. Yes. Victoria, this is her whole life. This is everything I've been... He couldn't finish. I've been trying to figure out how to pay for college for 9 years, Victoria. I've been putting money in a coffee can. I have $640 in that can. And you're telling me... I'm telling you that your daughter is going wherever she wants to go, Daniel. And you're going to be there to see her go. And you're going to sleep in a bed. He put his hand over his mouth. He didn't cry. Not quite. But it took him a full 30 seconds before he could speak. Why? Why what? Why me? Victoria, there are 4,062 people. You said so yourself. Why me? She didn't answer right away. She picked up her coffee. She looked out the window. The gray morning had turned yellow. The sun was full up over the East River now, and it was hitting the glass of the tower across the street and throwing light back into her office in sharp, bright lines. Because you were the one they put at my table. That was a mistake. Was it? Ma'am. Daniel, someone in this building. I will find out who, and when I do, there will be a conversation. Someone in this building thought it would be funny or cruel or both to put a janitor at my private dinner. To embarrass me. To remind me that I'm a woman in a wheelchair who eats alone, and that my own HR department doesn't respect me enough to get a reservation right. That's what last night was supposed to be. Okay. But they picked you, Daniel. Out of 4,000 people they picked you. And you walked in and you said, yes, ma'am, and you broke the bread, and you asked about my chair like I was a person, and you talked about your daughter like she was the sun. She turned from the window. Her eyes were wet again. She was not hiding it. They tried to humiliate me, she said, and instead they gave me the first real conversation I've had in 7 months. So whoever set that reservation, they didn't make a mistake, Daniel. They made a miracle. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let a miracle walk back out of my building in a frayed jacket. The office was very quiet. Daniel looked down at the folder, at the scholarship clause, at the salary, at the start date. He looked up. Can I ask you something? Yes. Is this a job or is this charity? She didn't flinch. Daniel, if I wanted to give you charity, I'd write you a check and send you home. This is a job. You will work for it. I'm going to put you in rooms that will terrify you. I'm going to ask you to do things you don't know how to do yet. You're going to fail in front of people who make more money than God, and you're going to come back the next day and try again. And I'm going to be harder on you than I am on anyone in this building, because if I'm not, they'll eat you alive. So no, this is not charity. This is the hardest job I have ever offered anyone, and I'm offering it to you because I think you can do it. And if I can't, then you try. And if you still can't, you tell me and we figure it out. But you don't get to say no before you've tried. Not to me. Not after last night. He was quiet for a long time. Victoria. Yes. I need to talk to Lily first. Something in her face softened. Of course you do. I can't. This isn't a thing I can say yes to without her. She's 11, but this is her life too. If I say yes, everything changes. School, neighbors, her whole, I need to ask her. Daniel. Yes. That's the best answer you could have given me. She smiled, the biggest one yet. It was still tired, but it was real. Take the folder. Take it home. Read it with her. Ask her what she thinks. And then Monday morning you tell me. Yes, ma'am. Victoria. Victoria, sorry. He stood up. His legs felt strange. He picked up the folder. He held it against his chest like a thing that might blow away. At the door he stopped. Victoria. Yes. Why did you really ask about her last night? About Lily. She looked at him from behind the desk. The wheelchair tucked under, the reading glasses, the coffee. The woman the whole world thought was made of steel. Because she said, "I'm 38 years old, Daniel, and the doctors told me after the accident that I'm probably never going to have children of my own. And when you talked about your daughter, about the rabbit and the granola bar and the tie you gave me, something I've been grieving for 7 months without even letting myself grieve it. You gave me a window, Daniel, into a life I'm never going to have." Her voice didn't break, but it got very small. I wasn't asking about Lily to be kind. I was asking because I needed to hear it, because no one had let me hear it in a long time. So thank you. Daniel stood in the doorway of the 46th floor office of Hale Tower with a folder against his chest and an 11-year-old daughter waiting for him in Queens, and he realized slowly, the way a man realizes a truth he's been circling for hours, that the woman in front of him wasn't offering him a job. She was asking him to let her in. Victoria. Yes. Lily's school play is next Friday. She's a tree. She has 6 lines. Victoria's eyes came up. I think she'd like it, Daniel said quietly. If you came. The billionaire CEO of Hale Industries, who had not been invited anywhere in 7 months, that wasn't a board meeting or a fundraiser, who had started to believe she was done being invited anywhere at all, put her hand flat on her desk like she was steadying herself. Daniel. Yes, I would be honored. He nodded. He couldn't say anything else. His throat wouldn't work. He opened the door. Margaret Chen was standing right there, pretending she hadn't been standing right there. She took one look at his face, and her own face did something complicated. Mr. Brooks, I'll walk you out. Thank you, Ms. Chen. They walked back down the long glass hallway. This time the people in suits looked at him differently. Word somehow had already moved. A man nodded at him. A woman actually smiled. The elevator attendant pushed the button to the lobby without being told. As the doors closed, Daniel heard Margaret Chen say very softly to no one in particular, "Well, I'll be damned." The elevator began to fall. Daniel Brooks held the folder against his chest all the way down 46 floors and did not let go. He didn't open it. He didn't look at it. He just held it. A man across the aisle with a newspaper glanced up at him, once saw whatever was on his face, and looked away fast. Daniel got off at his stop. He walked the 6 blocks home. He climbed the 4 flights of stairs. He put his key in the sticky lock, and it took him 3 tries because his hands wouldn't hold still. Lily was at school. The apartment was quiet in that specific way. An empty apartment is quiet when you're used to hearing a child in it. The refrigerator hummed. A pipe ticked. Somewhere downstairs, a baby was crying. Daniel set the folder on the kitchen table. He sat down across from it. He stared at it for 20 minutes without opening it. Then he got up, made a pot of coffee. He didn't drink, sat back down, and finally, with the careful fingers of a man diffusing something, he opened the folder and read every word, every line, every clause, twice. And when he got to the bottom, he put his forehead down on the kitchen table and he let himself cry. Not a lot, not loud, just enough. The way a man cries when he's been holding something for 9 years and someone finally takes one end of it off him. When he was done, he wiped his face on his sleeve, walked to the coffee can above the stove, took out the $640, counted it, and put it back. He didn't know why he did that. He just did. At 3:15 p.m., he walked to the corner and waited for Lily. She came running the last half block the way she always did. Backpack bouncing. Hair flying. She threw herself at him the way she'd thrown herself at him every afternoon since she was 4 years old. Hey, sunshine. How was your meeting with the important lady? He knelt down. He looked her in the eye. Baby, I need to talk to you about something tonight, something important. She searched his face. 11 years old, and she already knew how to read a man's face like her mother had. Good important or bad important? I don't know yet. That's why I need to talk to you. Okay, Daddy. She slipped her hand into his, and they walked home. He made macaroni and cheese because it was her favorite. He cut up an apple because he'd promised Sarah 9 years ago that he'd always put a piece of fruit on the plate. He sat down across from her at the little kitchen table, and he slid the folder between them. What's that, Daddy? It's a job. They offered me a job. At the building where you clean. At the building where I clean, but not cleaning. A real office job. Upstairs. Lily's eyes got big. Daddy, that's amazing. Baby, wait, listen. He opened the folder. He turned it so she could see. He pointed. This says the salary is $92,000 a year. Lily's mouth opened. She looked at the number. She looked at him. Daddy, is that a lot? Baby, that's more money than I've ever made in my entire life. In 1 year. That's more than I made in the last 3 years put together. Daddy. Wait, there's more. He pointed lower on the page. This part, right here. See this word scholarship. This says that if I take this job any school you want to go to from now until you're a grown-up all the way through college, all the way through being a veterinarian, if you want to be one, they'll pay for it. All of it. Lily's face did something complicated. She put her fork down. Daddy? Yes, baby. I could go to the good vet school. The one in the pictures I showed you. Cornell, baby. Yes, if you work hard and you get in Cornell. She sat very still. She was not a child who cried often. She took after him that way. But her eyes were very wet. Daddy. Yes. Is this real? It's real, baby. Then why are we even talking about it? Why aren't you saying yes? He took a breath. Because, baby, if I say yes, a lot of things are going to change. Like what? Like I don't know. I'll work days instead of nights. I'll be home for dinner with you every night. We'll move probably. To a place where you have a bedroom and I have a bedroom. You'll sleep in a bed, Daddy? I'll sleep in a bed, sunshine. Her lip trembled. I want you to sleep in a bed. I know, baby. You think I don't know you sleep on the couch because I have the bedroom. I know, Daddy. I've always known. His throat closed. Mommy would want you to sleep in a bed. And that was it. That was the thing that did it. He put his hand over his mouth, and he sat there for a long moment, and he breathed through his nose, and he did not let himself fall apart in front of his daughter, because he'd promised Sarah 9 years ago that he wouldn't. Not in front of Lily. Not ever. Lily reached across the table. She put her small hand on top of his big one. Daddy. Yes. Say yes to the lady. Baby, I need you to really think about this. It's going to be different. You'll be in the same school, I promise, but... Daddy? Say yes. Are you sure, sweetheart? Daddy, look at me. He looked at her. She looked exactly like her mother in that moment. 11 years old with her mother's stubborn jaw and her father's stubborn eyes. Mommy told me once, Lily said, before she got really sick, she told me. She said, Lily, your daddy is the strongest man I've ever met, but he's going to be sad for a long time after I'm gone, and you have to help him remember that good things are still going to happen. That's what she said. And Daddy... Her voice got very small. This is a good thing. This is the good thing, Daddy. Daniel Brooks, 41 years old. Single father, widower of 9 years, put his face in his hands at his own kitchen table and cried in front of his 11-year-old daughter for the first time in her entire life. Lily got up out of her chair. She walked around the table. She climbed into his lap the way she had when she was 4, even though she was almost too big for it now. She put her arms around his neck and she held him, and she didn't say anything because Sarah had taught her in the last 2 years of her life that sometimes the only thing you could do for someone who was hurting was hold them and shut up. He held her back. It took a long time. When he could finally speak again, he said, "Okay, baby. Okay. Okay, I'll say yes. Yes. But I want to tell you something about the lady. The important lady. Her name is Victoria. Victoria Hale. She owns the building." Lily's eyes got big. The whole building. The whole building, and a lot of other buildings. She's baby. She's one of the richest people in the whole city. Wow. But I need you to know something about her, okay? Because you're going to meet her. She's coming to your school play next Friday. She's coming to my play. If she can, yes, I invited her. Daddy, she's going to see me be a tree. Yes, she is. I have 6 lines, Daddy. I'm a very important tree. You are the most important tree in the whole play, Sunshine. Okay, tell me about her. He thought about how to say it. Baby. She's in a wheelchair. Her legs don't work anymore. There was an accident a long time ago. Well, not that long ago, but a while, and she can't walk. So when you meet her, she's going to be sitting down, and she's going to stay sitting down, and I need you to just be you. Okay? You don't stare. You don't ask. You just say hello, like you'd say hello to anybody. Lily thought about that for a moment. Daddy. Yes. Is she sad about it? He thought about the corner booth at the Blackwood Grill. He thought about 7 months of eating alone. He thought about the way Victoria had closed her eyes for 1 full second when he put his hand on top of hers. Yes, baby. I think she's sad about it. Does she have anybody? Not really, sweetheart. Nobody at all. Not that I could tell. Lily was quiet for a long time. She was still in his lap. Her head was on his shoulder. He could feel her thinking. Daddy, yes. Does she have to sit by herself at lunch? And that somehow broke him all over again, because only an 11-year-old could take the entire tragedy of Victoria Hale. The wealth, the isolation, the dead pilot, the ruined spine, the 7 months of silence, and distill it down to the simplest, truest, most devastating thing in the world. Did she have to sit by herself at lunch? I think she does, baby. That's really sad, Daddy. I know, Sunshine. We should invite her to sit with us. I think we are, baby. I think that's exactly what we're doing. Lily nodded against his shoulder like she'd settled something. Okay, then I'll be extra nice to her. And I'll show her my rabbit. Mommy's rabbit. I show it to people when I want them to know they matter to me. That's a very good plan, sweetheart. Okay, Daddy. Okay, baby. She climbed off his lap. She sat back down at her plate. She picked up her fork. Daddy? Yes, Sunshine. You should call the lady and tell her yes. I will, baby. I'll call her right now. She nodded very seriously and went back to her macaroni. Daniel stood up. His legs felt shaky. He walked to the counter and picked up his phone. His cheap prepaid phone, the only one he could afford, and looked down at it. He didn't have Victoria's number. Jianso. He stood there for a second like a fool, and then he remembered the folder. He walked back to the table. He flipped to the last page. At the bottom, under a line that said, "For questions, please contact," there was a handwritten note. Not typed, handwritten, in blue ink. It said, Daniel, my personal cell, any hour, V, and a phone number. He stared at it for a long moment. Lily looked up from her plate with a mouthful of macaroni. Daddy? Call her. He called her. She picked up on the second ring. Daniel. Just his name. Not hello, not who's this, just his name, like she'd been sitting with the phone in her hand. Victoria. Yes. I talked to Lily. And he looked across the kitchen at his daughter. She was watching him, a fork suspended halfway to her mouth, her eyes enormous. She said yes, Victoria. We both said yes. There was a pause on the other end of the line. A long one. Long enough that he almost said, "Hello, are you still there?" Then Victoria spoke. Her voice was not steady. Daniel. Yes. Thank you. Ma'am, I should be the one. No. Listen to me. Thank you. I've had a very long day. I've been sitting in this office since you left. I had a board meeting at 11 that I don't remember any of. I've been waiting for this phone call, Daniel, and I didn't want to admit to myself that I was waiting for it. And I need you to know that I understand what you just did. Both of you. Both of you said yes. Thank you. Victoria, are you crying? No. Okay. A little. Okay. Shut up, Daniel. Yes, ma'am. He heard her laugh. It was small, it was wet, but it was a laugh. Lily was mouthing something at him across the kitchen. Tell her I said hi. Victoria. Yes. Lily says hi. Lily is there. She's eating macaroni and cheese. Oh. A beat. Oh, Daniel. Would it be all right if You want to say hi? If that's all right. Hold on. He held the phone out. Baby. Lily. The lady wants to say hi to you. Lily's eyes got bigger than he'd ever seen them. She wiped her mouth on her sleeve, which Sarah would have scolded her for, which he should have scolded her for, but he didn't, not tonight, and she took the phone with both hands very carefully, like it might break. Hello? There was a pause. Daniel could hear Victoria's voice, small and tinny, through the speaker. Yes, ma'am. I'm Lily. Pause. Yes, ma'am. I'm 11. Pause. Yes, ma'am. Macaroni and cheese. My daddy makes it with the extra cheese because he says I'm a growing girl. Lily was smiling now. A shy smile. A real one. Yes, ma'am. Next Friday at 6 o'clock. I'm a tree. Pause. No, ma'am, not any tree. I'm an oak tree. Oak trees are very important. The Greeks thought they were sacred. I learned that in social studies. Shaw. Daniel watched his daughter, his strange, smart, old-soul daughter, hold a cell phone to her ear and tell the richest woman in New York City about oak trees in Greek mythology. And he thought for one clear second that if Sarah could see this, she would laugh. She would put her hand over her mouth and she would laugh. The laugh she used to laugh before the jokes were even finished, and she would look at him and she would say, Daniel, she's going to be okay. Look at her. She's going to be okay. Lily was nodding now, nodding very seriously. Yes, ma'am. I'll save you a seat, right next to Daddy. Okay, okay, okay. Bye. She held the phone back out to him. She wants to talk to you again, Daddy. He took the phone. Victoria. Daniel. Yes. Your daughter is something else. I know, ma'am. She just lectured me about oak trees for 90 seconds. I heard. She's going to save me a seat. I heard that too. Daniel. Yes. You know, I haven't been to a school play, and I don't think I've ever been to a school play. I don't have nieces or nephews. This isn't something I know how to do. Ma'am, you just show up. You clap when everybody else claps. That's it. That's it. What do I bring? You don't have to bring anything. Daniel, I can't show up empty-handed. Tell me what to bring. He thought for a second. Flowers at the end, when they do the curtain call. You give her flowers. What kind of flowers? Daisies. She likes daisies. Daisies. Got it. There was a pause. Daniel. Yes. I'll see you Monday, 9 a.m. Yes, ma'am. Victoria. Victoria. Good night, Daniel. Good night, Lily. Good night, Victoria. He hung up the phone. He set it on the counter. He turned around. Lily was still sitting at the table. She had both hands folded in her lap, and she was looking at him with the biggest eyes in the world. Daddy. Yes, sunshine. I like her. Yeah, baby. Do you like her? He thought about it. He thought about her hand on the tablecloth. The tired smile. The $640 in the coffee can that didn't matter anymore. The way she had said "shut up, Daniel" through tears on the phone. Yes, baby. I think I do. Good. Lily picked up her fork again. Eat your dinner, Daddy. It's getting cold. Daniel Brooks sat down at his own kitchen table across from his 11-year-old daughter, and for the first time in 9 long years, he picked up his fork and ate a full meal without counting how much it had cost. Daniel stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 6:15 a.m., in the same tie Lily had picked out for him. He had 3 ties. This was the only one that mattered. He knotted it twice, and it came out wrong both times. On the 3rd try, Lily appeared in the doorway in her pajamas with her hair sticking up. Daddy, you're doing it wrong. I know, baby. Come here. She stood on the toilet seat so she could reach. She knotted his tie the way her mother had taught her 3 years before she died, when she'd still had strength in her hands. Lily had been 8. She remembered every motion. She tightened the knot, smoothed, the front stepped back. There. Now you look like a man who owns things. Baby. Yes, Daddy. I'm scared. She looked at him very seriously. I know, Daddy. But you don't have to be. Victoria knows you can do it. How do you know that? Because she offered you the job. He picked her up off the toilet seat and held her for a second longer than he needed to. Then he set her down, made her breakfast, walked her to the corner, and watched her go. She turned once at the crosswalk and waved. He waved back until she was out of sight. Then Daniel Brooks rode the R train into Manhattan and walked into the lobby of Hale Tower through the front door for the 2nd time in his life. Marcus looked up. Marcus smiled. An actual smile. Morning, Mr. Brooks. Morning, Marcus. 46th floor. She's waiting for you. Daniel rode up alone. When the doors opened, Margaret Chen was standing there with a cup of coffee in her hand and a look on her face that Daniel couldn't quite read. Mr. Brooks. Ms. Chen. Black, no sugar. Is that right? How did? I asked the night crew. They said you drink it out of the break room machine every shift. He took the coffee. His hand shook a little. Thank you, ma'am. You can call me Margaret Daniel. Margaret. She turned and started walking, and he followed her down the hall. The same hall where 4 days ago people had stared at him like he was a stain on the carpet. This morning a woman actually said good morning. A man nodded. Somewhere, somehow, in the 3.5 days since he'd left this building with a folder against his chest, word had gotten around. Victoria was at her desk. Same black suit, different blouse, same tired eyes. She looked up when he walked in, and something in her face moved, and she almost smiled. Daniel? Victoria. Sit down. We have a lot to do. What followed was the hardest 3 months of Daniel Brooks's working life. He did not know how to be a director of anything. He did not know how to read a quarterly report. He did not know what 1,000 of the words in his own job description meant. On his first day, Victoria sat him down at a small conference table in her office with a stack of binders, and she said, Daniel, you are going to learn this the way my father taught me. Page by page, ask every question. Do not pretend you know something you don't. Are we clear? Yes, ma'am. Victoria. Yes, Victoria. And he did. He asked every question. He wrote things down in a spiral notebook from a drugstore because he didn't want a fancy leather one. Yet he hadn't earned the leather one yet, he said, and Victoria had not argued with him. He stayed late. He came in early. He ate his lunch at his desk because the thought of going into the 46th floor dining room made him sweat through his shirt. In his second week, a man named Trevor Ashworth, Harvard, MBA, $800,000 a year, face like a man who'd never been told no, stopped Daniel in the hallway. "You're the janitor." Daniel stopped walking. He turned. "I was a janitor, Mr. Ashworth. Now I work in community relations." Trevor laughed. It was the kind of laugh that wasn't really a laugh. "Oh, that's cute. That's what we're calling it. Listen, buddy, I don't know what you did at that dinner, and honestly, I don't care. But this building has rules. There's a ladder. There's a process. You don't just get to skip it because the boss took pity on you, okay? So you might want to watch where you—" Trevor. Victoria's voice, from halfway down the hall. Daniel hadn't heard her come up. Neither had Trevor. She was in her wheelchair with Margaret behind her, and her face was the face she made right before she fired someone. Daniel had not seen that face yet. He had only heard about it. "Victoria, I was just—" "Trevor, my office. 5 minutes." "Victoria, I was—" "5 minutes." Trevor went white and walked away fast. Victoria rolled up next to Daniel. She did not look at him. She looked at Trevor's back until he was out of sight. Then she turned. "Are you all right?" "Yes, ma'am." "Victoria. Victoria." "Daniel, you will have to get used to people talking to you like that. I will fire them when they do it in front of me, but they will do it behind my back. And you need to know right now that it does not matter. Do you understand me?" "Yes, ma'am." "Why does it not matter?" Because you belong here, Daniel. Because I said so. Because the day I hired you was the first day in 7 months I was glad I came to work. Because every single report you've turned in has been better than the last. And because the contracted staff your people are talking. They are talking, Daniel, about you, about the changes coming, about the fact that I'm putting 4,000 people on the payroll next quarter. That is you. You did that. Trevor Ashworth is going to be forgotten, and your name is going to be on the building one day. Is that clear? Daniel's throat was tight. Victoria, is that clear? Yes, ma'am. Good. She rolled away toward her office. Margaret followed. Daniel stood in the hallway for a long moment with his coffee going cold in his hand, and then he went back to his desk, and he did not think about Trevor Ashworth for the rest of the afternoon. But all of that, the binders, the meetings, the man in the hallway, the long days, all of it was just the frame. The real picture was the school play. The Friday of Lily's play, Daniel left the office at 4:30 p.m. sharp. Victoria was already gone. She'd left at 3 because her driver had told her the traffic to Queens on a Friday was bad, and she would not. She would not be late for her first school play. Daniel rode the train home. He changed his shirt. Lily was vibrating. "Daddy, what if I forget my lines?" "You won't forget your lines, sunshine." "What if I do?" "Then you make up new ones. You're an oak tree baby. Oak trees can say whatever they want." She laughed. It was a nervous laugh, but it was a laugh. They walked to the school together. It was a 10-minute walk. Lily held his hand the whole way. At the front of the school, under the streetlight, a black SUV was parked. The driver was already out. The ramp was already down. Victoria was in her chair at the edge of the sidewalk with a bouquet of daisies in her lap, wearing a charcoal coat and a soft blue scarf that Daniel had never seen before. Lily stopped walking. "Daddy, that's her. That's her baby. Daddy, I'm nervous." "Baby, she's more nervous than you are, I promise." Lily let go of his hand. She walked up to Victoria by herself. Daniel hung back. He couldn't help it. He wanted to see this. "Hi." Victoria looked up. Hi, Lily. You came. I said I would. Daddy said you would bring daisies. Your daddy was right. Victoria held them out. These are for you, after the play. Can I see them now? Of course. Lily took the flowers. She buried her face in them. She came up smiling. They smell really good. I'm glad. Then Lily did something that made Daniel have to look up at the sky for a moment. She walked around behind Victoria's wheelchair, and she leaned down, and she put her arms around Victoria from behind, and she whispered something in her ear. Victoria went very still. Then she put her hand over Lily's small hand, where it was crossed over her shoulder, and she nodded, and she did not cry. But she closed her eyes for 1 full second, the way she had at the dinner table. Lily straightened up. She came back to Daniel. Daddy, I have to go backstage now. Ms. Patterson said to be there at 5:45. Go, sunshine. Knock 'em dead. Oak trees don't knock things dead, Daddy. They're trees. Go be the best tree in the tri-state area, baby. Okay, Daddy. Bye, Victoria. Break a leg, Lily. Lily ran inside. Daniel walked up to Victoria. What did she whisper to you? Victoria looked up at him. The street light was in her eyes. She was not crying quite, but she was close. She said thank you for sitting with us at lunch. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. He didn't try. He just put his hand on the back of Victoria's wheelchair lightly, the way a man puts his hand on a thing he is promising to help carry, and he pushed her up the ramp and into the school. The play was a disaster in the way all elementary school plays are a disaster. The sound system squealed. A third grader threw up backstage. The boy playing the narrator lost his place and started reading from the wrong page. One of the flower children picked her nose through her entire monologue. Lily was magnificent, as she hit every one of her 6 lines. She did not rush them. She did not forget them. She said them slow and clear the way her father had practiced with her every night for 2 weeks at the kitchen table. When she finished her last line, the oak tree has stood for 1,000 years, and will stand 1,000 more. She looked out into the audience, and she found her father's face, and then she found Victoria's face, and she smiled. Daniel Brooks sitting next to Victoria Hale in the back row of the gymnasium. Because it was the only row with room for a wheelchair, felt Victoria reach over in the dark. She did not take his hand. She just put her hand on the armrest of his folding chair. Palm up. He looked down at it. He did not take it either. Not quite. He put his hand next to hers so the edges of their little fingers were touching. Not holding, just touching. A careful thing. A quiet thing. The thing that 2 grown, scared, lonely people do when they have been alone for so long that anything more than touching would feel like too much. They stayed like that until the lights came up. At the curtain call, Victoria rolled herself down to the stage with the daisies in her lap, and Lily ran out in her brown tree costume with leaves in her hair, and Victoria handed her the flowers and said, "You were the best oak tree I have ever seen in my life, Lily Brooks." You've never seen an oak tree in a play before, Victoria. That's true, but I am certain. Lily laughed. She hugged Victoria, a real hug, a full one, and Victoria hugged her back, and for a moment, just a moment, Daniel saw on Victoria Hale's face the expression the world had told her she would never wear. The expression of a woman holding a child who loved her. The 3 of them went out for ice cream afterward because Lily insisted. They sat at a plastic table in a cheap ice cream shop 2 blocks from the school. Victoria had vanilla in a paper cup. Daniel had coffee. Lily had a triple scoop of something with gummy bears on top that she had chosen specifically to horrify the adults at the table. Lily, Victoria said, that is an unholy combination of flavors. It's the best thing in the world, Victoria. It cannot possibly be. Try it. No. Try it. Victoria tried it. She made a face. That is terrible. I know. Why do you like it? Because it's terrible. You are an extremely strange child, Lily Brooks. Thank you, Victoria. Daniel sat there with his coffee and watched the two of them bicker about ice cream, and he thought about his wife, and he thought about the helicopter over the Hudson, and he thought about 4,062 people who were about to be seen for the first time, and he did not cry. But his chest hurt in the good way, in the way it had not hurt in 9 years. That night, after he walked Victoria back to her SUV and said goodnight, and walked Lily home and put her to bed with the daisies in a jar of water on her dresser, Daniel sat down on the couch that was no longer his bed. He had a bed now in the second bedroom of the bigger apartment Victoria had helped him find 2 weeks ago, because yes, that had happened too, and he looked at the wall and he thought, Sarah, honey, I think we're going to be okay. 3 things happened in the 6 months that followed. The first thing was that Daniel Brooks, against every expectation including his own, became good at his job. Not just competent. Good. He walked into meeting rooms where men in $3,000 suits had been arguing about contract language for 4 hours, and he'd listen for 10 minutes, and then he'd ask one simple question in his plain Queen's accent, and the room would go quiet because the simple question was always the one nobody had thought of. He had a gift. Victoria had seen it at the dinner table in the Blackwood Grill before he'd even finished his bread. It turned out to be real. By month 4, Hale Industries had brought every contracted worker onto the payroll. 4,062 people. Full benefits. Dental. Vision. A scholarship fund for the children of all full-time employees modeled on Lily's. Victoria gave a speech at the announcement. She used the word we 87 times. She did not use the word I once. When she was done, Daniel stood up from his seat in the 3rd row and started clapping, and the entire room stood up with him. And Victoria looked at him from the stage and mouthed, "Thank you," and he mouthed, "Don't start crying." Victoria, and she laughed out loud into the microphone, which she had not done in public in 7 months, and the press the next day wrote about it for a week. The second thing was that Victoria Hale started showing up at the Brooks apartment for dinner on Sunday nights. It started small. She came over once because Lily had asked her to, and because Daniel had told Lily that probably Victoria was busy, and because Lily, 11-year-old Lily, with her mother's stubborn jaw, had called Victoria directly and said, "My daddy says you're busy, but I don't believe him." Victoria had come that very Sunday. She had brought a bottle of wine Daniel couldn't pronounce, and a bakery cake that cost more than his groceries for the week. She had eaten his pot roast. Sarah's pot roast, the recipe he'd kept in a drawer for 9 years and finally made again, and she had told him with a full mouth that it was the best thing she'd eaten since she was 12 years old. She came back the next Sunday, and the next. By the 4th Sunday, Lily had set a 3rd place at the table without being asked. By the 6th, Victoria knew where the plates were kept. By the 10th, she was arguing with Lily about the rules of Monopoly. "Victoria, you can't put a hotel on Baltic Avenue. You don't have enough houses." "Lily, I have been playing Monopoly since before your father was born." "Then you should know the rules." "I am the CEO of a major corporation. That is not a Monopoly rule, Victoria." Daniel from the kitchen doorway with a dish towel over his shoulder almost dropped the plate he was drying. He was not a man who spoke much about his own feelings. He had been raised by a quiet father in a quiet house in a small town in upstate New York, and he had married a quiet woman who had done most of the talking for both of them for 12 years. And when she died, he had gone quieter still, because there was no one left to interpret him. Lily had become his only interpreter. Lily read him the way her mother had. But on the 11th Sunday night, after Victoria had gone home and Lily had gone to bed, and he was standing at the sink washing the last of the dishes, Daniel said out loud to no one to the kitchen, to the water running in the sink to Sarah if she was listening, "I think I'm in trouble, honey." He did not clarify. He did not have to. The third thing was that on a Thursday night in late October, almost exactly 1 year after the night at the Blackwood Grill, Daniel Brooks took Victoria Hale to dinner. He made the reservation himself. Not at the Blackwood, at a small Italian place in the West Village that Sarah had loved. He wore the same tie. Lily tied it for him again. She had asked him only one question very quietly when he'd told her where he was going. "Daddy, are you going to tell her?" "Tell her what, Sunshine?" "That you love her." Daniel had gone very still. Lily had looked up at him with her mother's eyes. "Daddy, I'm 11, not stupid." "Baby." "It's okay, Daddy. Mommy would be happy. I know she would. She told me remember good things. She said good things were still going to happen." "I remember, baby." "So go tell Victoria, because I think she loves you too, and I think she's scared to say it. And somebody has to be brave first, Daddy." He had knelt down. He had held his daughter by the shoulders. He had looked her in the eye. "When did you get so smart, Lily Brooks?" "I was born smart, Daddy. You just didn't notice." At the restaurant, at a small corner table with a candle between them, Victoria asked him 3 times why he was so quiet, and he said, "I'm fine," 3 times, and on the 3rd time she put her fork down and said, "Daniel, say it. Whatever it is, just say it. I have known you for a year, and I can tell when something is on your face, and something is on your face." He took a breath. "Victoria." "Yes, I need to say something, and I need you to let me say the whole thing before you say anything back. Can you do that?" "Yes. A year ago," he said, "I walked into a restaurant in the wrong jacket. I sat down at the wrong table. I said yes, ma'am, to a woman who could have thrown me out of the building, but didn't. I ate a steak I couldn't afford. I went home that night and I told my daughter I don't know yet when she asked me if something good had happened. And I sat on that couch for 6 hours until the sun came up, and I did not sleep 1 minute because I could not figure out what had just happened to me." "Daniel, you said let me finish. Sorry." "Victoria, I know what I am. I am a 42-year-old widower from Queens who dropped out of high school. I know what you are. You are the most powerful woman in this city. I know what this looks like from the outside, and I know what people have said about us behind our backs for a year, and I don't care. I don't care about any of it. Here is what I care about. I care that my daughter set a 3rd plate at the table without being asked. I care that you argue with an 11-year-old about Monopoly. I care that you came to a school play and brought daisies. I care that the first time I saw you smile was when I put a piece of bread on your plate, and I have been trying for a year to get you to smile like that again. And every time you do it, something in my chest does something it has not done since I buried my wife." Victoria's eyes were very wet now. She was not hiding it. She did not hide things from him anymore. "Daniel, I'm not done." "Okay." "I love you, Victoria." The candle between them flickered. Victoria put her hand over her mouth. "I love you. I have loved you, I think, since the night you took the bread. I did not know that was what was happening to me, because I have not been in love in 9 years, and I forgot what it looks like from the inside. But I know now, and my daughter knows it. And I think Victoria, I think you might know it too. And I am telling you tonight because Lily told me somebody had to be brave first. And I figured if an 11-year-old could say it, a 42-year-old man from Queens could say it too." He stopped. He picked up his water glass with both hands to stop them shaking. Victoria did not say anything for a long moment, and then she said, "Daniel." "Yes." "Put the water down." "Okay." He put the water down. "Come here." He leaned across the table. "Victoria. Hale billionaire, CEO of Hale Industries. The woman the whole world thought was made of steel. The woman who had eaten alone at the Blackwood Grill every Thursday for 7 months. Because she believed deep down that no one was ever going to love her in a wheelchair." Put both of her hands on either side of Daniel Brooks's face, and she kissed him softly over a candle in a small Italian restaurant in the West Village. When she pulled back, her eyes were still wet. "Daniel." "Yes." "I love you too. I have loved you since you asked me about my chair like I was a person. I have been waiting for a year for you to say it first, because I was too scared, and I am very sorry I made you wait." "Don't apologize." "I'm apologizing." "Victoria." "Yes." "Shut up." She laughed. It was the laugh he had fought for a year to earn. It was the real one. They were married the following spring. Lily was the flower girl. She wore a white dress with daisies in her hair. She walked down the aisle carrying Sarah's rabbit because she had told her father very seriously that her mother needed to be at the wedding, and the rabbit was the closest thing she had. Daniel had not argued. He had kissed her forehead and said, "You bring her baby. You bring her with you." At the reception, Victoria gave a toast from her chair. She thanked her team. She thanked her friends. She thanked Margaret Chen, who cried. And then she lifted her glass toward the little girl in the white dress at the head table. "And to Lily Brooks," she said, who told her father when he was too scared to say it that somebody had to be brave first. "Lily, I am not your mother. I will never be your mother. Your mother was a third-grade teacher who made pot roast on Sundays and picked out your father's ties, and I know that, and I will not try to take her place, not ever. But if you will have me, if you will let me, I would be very honored to be the person who sits next to you at lunch for the rest of your life." Lily stood up on her chair in front of 400 guests and said into the microphone her new stepmother was holding, "Yes, please, Victoria." And the whole room stood up. Daniel Brooks, widower of 10 years single father, former night janitor, now director of the Hale Foundation, and husband of the most powerful woman in New York City, stood between his daughter and his wife on the dance floor that night, and he held one hand of each of them, and he thought, Sarah, honey, you were right. Good things were still going to happen." A year later, Victoria walked 6 steps on her own. The doctors had told her 4 years after the accident that with the right surgery and 2 years of therapy, she had a small chance, not a guarantee, but a chance of standing again for short periods. She had not told anyone. Not Daniel, not Lily, not Margaret. She had done the surgery. She had done the therapy. She had fallen on her face more times than she could count in a private room with a physical therapist who had sworn never to speak of it. And then, one Sunday afternoon in their apartment, while Daniel was in the kitchen making pot roast, Victoria stood up out of her chair. She took 1 step, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. She made it to the kitchen doorway. Daniel turned around with a wooden spoon in his hand and saw his wife standing in the doorway on her own 2 feet for the first time in 4 years. And he dropped the spoon on the floor, and he said the only thing he could think of to say, "Sarah, she did it." Victoria started laughing and crying at the same time. Daniel, catch me. I can't do 7. He caught her. Lily came running from the living room and saw them both standing there in the kitchen doorway, and she did not scream, she did not cry. She just looked at her father, and her father looked back at her, and Lily Brooks said very quietly, "Good things are still happening, Daddy." "Yes, they are, baby. I'm going to tell Mommy tonight. You do that, sunshine." That night, after the pot roast and the cake and the phone calls to Margaret and the doctors and everyone else, Daniel lay in bed next to his wife and listened to her breathe. He thought about a reservation made by mistake. He thought about a folder against his chest in an elevator. He thought about a hand on a tablecloth. He thought about a girl in a tree costume with 6 lines. He thought about 4,062 people who had names now and health insurance and scholarships for their children. He thought about Sarah, about the promise, about Lily's gonna need a daddy who still knows how to smile. He turned his head. Victoria was already asleep. Her face in the dark was the face of a woman who was no longer drowning. Daniel Brooks closed his eyes in a bed he finally slept in next to a woman he had not known he was allowed to love in a life that had started at the wrong table on a Thursday night in Manhattan. And the truth was this, and the truth had been this all along. The truth that a single father in a frayed gray jacket had carried up to the 46th floor without knowing he was carrying it. The truth that a billionaire CEO in a wheelchair had been waiting 7 months to hear without knowing she was waiting. No reservation is ever really a mistake. Not the ones that matter. Not the ones that save your life.